Welcome to Deep Dive Film School. I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people what?
Find good media. That's right. Our most popular platform are Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So please join us there. You can also follow both of us at Letterboxd, at Adam Palcher here, at Mr._Sherlock there.
Yes.
To follow us in all of our movie journeys.
Yes.
Let's continue this movie journey with
Yes.
The Gleaners I. Our final Agnès Varda film in the festival. We will be doing a bonus episode as well, so look out for that. But I think last time when we did Vagabond, we jumped 20 years. This time we're jumping to all the way to 2015 more years.
Yep.
Our first doc with her.
Which apparently she's been doing docs later, right? Like she did more fiction narrative stuff, and then I believe she started doing docs.
She is the female French Herzog.
The more I watch this. I will talk about that.
Yeah.
It is really interesting. We, through this festival so far, both of us not really knowing her, we've had all these sort of questions or sort of ponders around, like, how is she treating the audience? What is her actual outlook here? Mm-hmm. When is she diving in to kind of save us? And when is she letting us sort of twist in the wind? And here to really, again, very reminiscent of what Herzog has done, especially later in his career.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's more playful.
Yeah.
She is the main character in so many ways.
It is called The Gleaners I, so she is the I there.
And she's delightful.
It's the first time we get to see her on screen. And
my God.
I fucking love her.
I love her.
She's give her a big hug.
Yeah, like just fantastic. And such a... I am I know you are too, a total sucker for lived-in meandering documentaries that don't have to be like, this is really important.
Talking head, this, archival footage, then this, and then this, and yeah.
Instead, it's almost like, and again, very Herzogian, is this idea of there's something on my mind.
Let's go find out more about it. And on the way there, a kismet moment happened that also is about the thing that's on my mind, right? And that's what this whole thing unfolds with. But it starts with a really weird premise. Do you want to tell us, what is a gleaner? Yeah. It's honestly, I'd never really heard this term before.
Me either.
Wasn't really sure what exactly I was getting into here. I think I knew this was a doc going in, but I tried to go in mostly blind like I always do. And Gleaners essentially is more of an older school tradition where after picking season and a lot of farms or whatever, once their harvest is through, a lot is left over. And so people can come in and feed their families basically for free, picking all the remnants of whatever it is, whether it's tomatoes, potatoes. I mean, we evolve into a lot more things than just food by the end of this movie, but it's essentially a picker, and it was mostly women that did it back in the day so they could provide for their families, and basically do it for free.
We're talking about like Flemish paintings that you've seen of like,
yes,
and that's even where the title of this movie comes from, right?
The Orsay Museum has a big famous one of all these gleaners, ladies with hay on their backs or wheat on their backs, and bending over and picking up and everything. And it's really fascinating. It's probably maybe more of a French thing.
It feels like it,
because I've never heard of someone doing this in America where we're from. But at the same time, it's essentially someone kind of cleaning up the extra stuff. Now over the years, what we come to find out is machinery has replaced a lot of this,
right?
And so the old tradition kind of became debunked, and then there was some legal things where is this actually reality? She lives in Paris, I believe, and she's going out to I think like the suburbs of Paris and seeing to these more rural areas, but there is urban gleaners as well, that we kind of come to. We'll get to them. They're kind of closer to the end of the movie versus the beginning, where we're really learning about the history and kind of why people do this, why people are against it. But it was definitely kind of a new thing. And another thing, well, go ahead. What did you think of the whole gleaner thing?
I thought it was fascinating. Yeah. I agree with you. I'd never heard of it before. It does feel like it's maybe French, like in that way, or,
European, maybe.
European. It has this, it feels like even the farmers who maybe don't agree with it have this kind of altruistic sense of like, well, it's tradition.
Yeah.
So we make sure they stay 10 yards back from the thresher. We
Certain
make sure
things, yeah.
they can only take so many pounds, although that has this really nebulous moment where like everybody's getting it totally different, where it's like, well, they can come twice. Well, they can take,
Is it 10 yards?
10 kilos.
25
And they can,
yards?
yeah, it's like it keeps changing because, and there's these funny alludes where there's someone dressed up as a barrister that's like reciting what the actual law is.
Yeah.
There's two different people where we meet that.
He's an interesting guy for sure.
And I think it's like, it was very, when it started out, I will admit, I wasn't that interested. Like when I was like, that's what a gleaner is. Like, I don't know that I really care about that.
I knew
like,
she would get us there though.
I did too. I was like, well, this movie is talked about in her filmography as one of her best. And so I was like, okay, well, we're getting somewhere. And boy, the unraveling into, where, and we take a long journey, but the fact that there's even a section of the journey that we get to where she herself
starts gleaning.
And not just with the potatoes, like sure there's that, but with her camera she's gleaning the whole time.
Oh, completely.
Right? The act of telling a story, the act of documenting and making a movie is an act of gleaning in its own way.
That's really interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And that all the people that she meets are these discarded, they're not the most successful. They're the little discarded people around the bottom of the tree, right?
they're we definitely kind of go through talking about food waste, because that's a huge part of what this is and why it started in the first place.
Right.
I think a lot of countries, in particular America, has an obscene amount of food waste.
Right.
When people are also starving on the streets.
And that's where it gets to the European thing, I think, is where it's like, in America, not to paint with too broad a brush, but like, we're more likely to be like, this is my property, you can't trespass, and let that fruit rot on the ground than let someone else come into our yard to take it. Like, that's a very capitalistic American concept.
Of course, yes.
Whereas the traditions here show that there's something different happening, and that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think you talked about her camera, and I think one thing that needs to be pointed out here is that you can tell this is her first movie using a digital camera because she loves it. And she's like, I just have to hit record and walk around. And that's what a lot of this movie is her. This is why it's Gleaners I, right? It's her adventure too, of kind of discovering the history of this. And
she has like no crew.
And what,
she's got
I think
DV camera.
I think there's maybe like another camera guy, and that's about it. Like it's pretty, and she's literally approaching people that are gleaning or picking, but you could tell, like, she talks about it a little bit, but she's like, I could just go, I don't have to switch film. It was this whole thing, and it was really funny, but it allows her to kind of, she brings us into her home or into the car on the travel, trying to capture these trucks with her hand.
The cutest thing
and and just like all that, she's fascinated. She's like a kid with these big trucks.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I thought she honestly, when she was talking about the trucks, she was going to go into a more kind of, not necessarily class system type of thing, but like, look at how this has evolved from what it used to be. We have these massive trucks that are bringing truckloads of things
all over the country.
So essentially these farmers or pickers, depending on their crops, some people, they just let on their land and do it. Some people, they just dump it places, and they have to know where they dump it to find it. Mm-hmm. But people are hauling away 300 pounds of potatoes.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that's what was left. It's like the harvester,
what the machines couldn't get.
Yeah, like the farmer, like, is going to be like, the machine got what it got. I'm not going to go back out there and like, oh, there's another 100 pounds. It's like, if it'll go to waste, so please come on in.
Absolutely. Why not?
You mentioned,
it's not a luxury, right? It's a necessity.
It's a necessity.
People.
You mentioned class system. I think it's really worth noting that the first two movies that we reviewed dealt with not, the first one is a pop star, like she's pretty upper class. Mm-hmm. The next one is like pretty blue collar, but like working class.
Yes.
And then there was a massive sea change when we got to Vagabond.
Yes.
Which was very much like, oh, we're now talking about like the homeless. We're talking about these kids who are like the street urchin kids. And something must have happened when she made that movie, because even 15 years later, the echoes are so strong in The Gleaners and I was thinking about Vagabond the whole time.
No doubt. I mean, you could see the main character in Vagabond doing this. Absolutely.
100%.
And she might have, and we just didn't know what it was called.
Well, and some of the other, I mean, the main character does not make it, right? But all of the other people that the main character encounters, with the exception of the druggies at the very end, are living these lives like these guys, right? Where it's like, they're dumpster divers. I mean, nowadays we refer to them as, it's the freegan movement, right? Where it's like, you upcycle, you dumpster dive, like, you take all the things, all the refuse that other people are throwing out, whether that be, and there's definitely some parts in this movie where I was a little like, where they just like, well, we got to cook all the chicken legs before they go bad. I was like, this is so disgusting.
Yeah.
But even then, it's like these guys that are using this like oven that they found on a street corner and fixed up. And they're like, and she's like, you're going to be eating meat for weeks. And they're like, no way, man, we always find people to share it with. And you're like, what a tried and true notion of like, those who have the least are still the first ones to share the little they have, because they know how hard it is out there.
I wish more people were like that. Yeah, no, that's the thing. I agree. I noticed that as well. And the thoughtfulness of these people who are literally, like you said, dumpster diving. It's really fascinating. And we go around and talk to a variety of different people in different places about this, why they do it. We get this whole thing about gleaning versus picking.
Right.
So picking is actually pulling something that's hanging, where gleaning is pulling something that was more of a sprout.
Yep.
And so fascinated. I didn't know about any of this. And then we have a variety of kickers. And, obviously this happened because of the class system and the governmental hierarchy of France, where people were very poor, especially after the war.
Right.
And this was the only way they could provide for their family. But I'm sure, a lot of anyone who's watched Anthony Bourdain or anyone who's traveled around the world eating knows that a lot of the best foods are kind of the peasant type foods, right? And that's where we get some of this amazing French cuisine or Italian cuisine that people just had to, this is why they're eating tripe and all parts of the animal, because they have to use what they just what they have. They don't want to waste anything.
Right.
To the point where we even have a chef out here gleaning.
Yeah.
And
because he grew up with
his
it, right?
grandparents taught him how to do it and everything. But I thought that guy was actually going to go the other direction and be like, fuck those people.
Yeah.
But he was like, no, I do it. Of course I do it. It saves money. The
Yeah.
food is not bad.
Yeah.
And if you find the right things to use, it's great, So it's kind of fascinating.
Now, during this period of time, Agnès does start to glean herself, and she finds these potatoes that are heart-shaped. And there is a really interesting thing, and this is still a thing nowadays. There's a whole food industry called imperfect foods, where like you can get, Abby and I subscribe to it every once in a while, where you can get like a whole box of fresh produce delivered to your house for dirt cheap, and it's because it doesn't look good. It's still a carrot. It's still a fresh carrot, but it looks like it's got legs, right? And so they're like, we can't sell this, right?
It's not like attractive looking,
right? And
or
so
it's oblong,
or
something.
So they can't sell it, right? And or it's like dented some weird
Heart-shaped
way.
potatoes were like a perfect Agnès.
Oh
moment,
my God,
though.
it's perfect. And so it's like we get this bookend of the potatoes where she's so delighted. I want the heart ones. I want the heart ones. And she's so proud of them when she brings them back to her apartment. And then later we see her and she's talking about gleaning with the camera and talking about, there's this amazing scene. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but she has these reproductions of portraits that she has down there, and she has his postcards, and she's looking at those, and then she just sort of turns the camera and she's like, and there's my hand. She's like, my God, is that my hand? Like, look how old it is, right? And it's all wrinkled. And she's like, there's the postcard is new, my hand is old. She's like, I guess I like filming old things. And then we cut back to the potatoes, and she didn't cook them. She didn't do anything. It's like she kept them, right? Because she loves the idea of gleaning so much. But it's like the other gleaners, they cook their food. They eat it. And she kept hers, and now they've grown all these horrible sprouts. They're moldy. And she's like, here's my heart potatoes, and you're like, what's the underlining weight of the message she's showing us by the delight of the heart potatoes, and now nothing nothing good can stay, right? That they still are going to decompose and fall
And
apart.
the thing is, would we get that moment if she wasn't using a digital camera?
Right.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Because you're going to have to set up, you need to get lighting,
Yeah.
you do all this stuff. And as a filmmaker who's, has this new discovery, I could just tell that that makes this movie one of her more unique ones that we've watched.
But what's crazy about, I totally agree with you, but at the same time, the other thing that's crazy about that is that even with it being a pain in the ass to set up, even with it being a pain in the ass to get the film in there, she's been doing this, oh, I noticed something, so I want to capture it, since Cleo. She's been doing it her whole career.
It's true.
There's so many just like street side noticings that she just
B-roll, yeah.
goes off to a flight of fancy in the middle of a narrative film. And you're like, again, very Herzogian in that way,
Yep.
of like, I saw, you go to Strosek, it's like, oh, well, now the dancing chicken is going to be the climax of my movie. Literally, because he just happened to show up to the tourist trap rest stop and was like, the dancing chicken? We got to film it. And then he was like, that's the end. That's how my movie ends, right? There's that same
Very kind of like,
delight here.
Yeah, no, very kind of fly by the seat of your pants filmmaking, which documentaries can get away with. I don't know if narrative can as much, but it has before, definitely.
Yeah.
I think another thing, too, here is that we start finding that there's all types of gleaners, right?
Yeah.
Not just food, like we start off, the big majority is, but we start finding people that are just finding junk on the street. There's one guy, this brick mason guy who builds towers out of junk that he gleans and just basically sees it as art.
Which is crazy to me because, like, it looks like, if we look at an image of the one from the movie, this bricklayer in France, it looks so much like the Watts Towers in Watts.
That's funny.
And you're like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's such a human thing, this, what they call outsider art, right? Where it's like, you're not being commissioned. And we meet some of those guys too. But this guy in particular, it's like, he just wants to take these dolls and like put them into masonry mud and touch the sky with them, right? And you're like, what is that? Where does that come from? That desire, right?
Yeah, there's one guy who makes art, and I believe he says that he doesn't even see things as a whole. It's more layers.
Yeah.
Like just how you could stack it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. How do you even get to that point? That's really interesting.
And then the one guy who says he always feels lonely, and so that's why he sees the things on the street and they seem lonely. And he's like, so then we find each other. And so he's just surrounded by all these things, but he sees them as pieces of art, right? He's like, oh yeah, look at the curve of that thing right there. Like, we can, right? And he wants to take it so he can like cut off that one curve and glue it to some other weird piece of sculpture. Like,
it's true. I mean, again, just very different than the hobos and gypsies that we see earlier in the film, who are really just doing it to survive.
Right.
And these people are doing that too to survive, but in a different way, maybe artistically survive or whatever. There's definitely a few hoarder type situations here for sure.
Yes,
You
very
get
much
inside
so.
of some of these people's houses and what they're doing, and it's pretty fascinating to get into. But the most fascinating guy was this guy at the end.
It truly blew me away when you first meet him. Also, it's like, you're like, this guy had like a head injury, like what's going on with him? Because he's not just gleaning. I mean, first of all, he's in Paris, so he's in the city.
Yeah, urban gleaning.
He's urban gleaning, and he is picking up raw food off the street and eating it, just eating it in the moment. And
gotta test it out.
Right. And it's like that. I mean, you think about feelings of being destitute, feelings of homelessness, or these sorts of things.
Sure.
And it's like, yeah, there's levels to these things. Literally off the ground into the mouth, you're like, that's like a pretty low rung on the ladder.
I mean,
that's
is
pretty
that
far down there, right?
Better or worse than pulling old fish out of
I guess, I don't know, man. I mean, you're not wrong, but it's just like, it definitely felt like, oh boy, what's going on with this guy? And she literally is like
fascinated by him, right?
And doesn't approach him for a while.
Yeah, she's from afar just filming him. Yeah, I agree. The way he kind of scavenges through everything. We later come to find out that he is actually purely vegetarian. So that's why he scavenges, and a lot of it's fruit and vegetables.
He has a master's degree.
Yeah, he has a master's degree. He teaches French to, I think it's Somalian. Or,
Yeah. I think he lives in an apartment.
Nepalese people.
Yeah, he lives in an apartment
Yeah.
with a bunch of refugees. And for free, he just turned like the room next to the laundry room in the basement into a classroom. Like all that stuff in there. She's like, he paid for it himself to decorate it like a classroom.
Yeah.
And then he's teaching them all English or teaching them all French.
Well, he's saving money on food, so he's got the money to do it, I guess.
It's just what, and he hands out leaflets. Like that's what he does for a job. Like,
but he's been doing, it's just fascinating to see him. And you're like, you see someone scavenging on the street and you make all these predetermined bias or judgments about, oh, they must be this or that or whatever. And then to your point, yeah, he has a master's degree and teaches people and just does this to survive. There's another guy who wears the rubber boots. Mm-hmm. He's been doing it for 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's insane. He says, regardless if they're rich or poor, they still throw food away. And just because of a stupid expiration date. He's like, if you smell it, you'll know if it's good or bad.
Right.
That's his like litmus test.
And he's like
famous for it.
Yeah. And he's like, I've never been sick. Never gotten sick.
And he's like, I have a job. I have a social security number. I have a house. But like it, some people, it's like the principle of like wasting.
That's
I'm definitely the gleaner in our house because anything that's passed due, I'm like, that's fine. Just try. It's fine. It's an expiration date.
Yeah.
It's like the Jerry Seinfeld joke. Like, how do they know that that's the date?
That's
the cows
the date.
tip them off?
Yeah.
Like, November 3rd. Like, how did exactly, like, strike at midnight? Does that thing churn into old milk?
You're absolutely right.
So...
And I think it's that dichotomy between... Like all of the artists in there, I think all that stuff's really interesting, and I like the flea markets that she goes to, and that adds like fun texture. But I think the real dichotomy comes down to those two groups.
The survivalist,
the survivalist versus like the environmentalist, right? And sometimes there's
the
overlap, right?
Mm-hmm.
But invariably it's like that first guy that we meet, who's basically like homeless, and he tells the story about getting pulled over driving a truck, and they gave him a breathalyzer, and that he's like, that was it. Like within the month, like I had lost my job, my home, my wife left me, took the kids, I haven't seen them in 5 years. Like it was everything. And you're like, oh shit, like that's why you are a gleaner, is because you have no idea how you're even going to get back on your feet.
Especially
right?
Without maybe a family or wife to help support you or, make you meals or whatever.
And I think it's really interesting that because there is this historical, going all the way back to these famous oil paintings of what a gleaner is, the stigma around it doesn't exist at all the way that it does in Western society. That there seems to be a sense, obviously not with everybody, but so far what we've seen, and maybe this is just Varda's lens we're seeing it through, but it feels like in these European countries, there is maybe not a nobility to the homeless situation.
It's an ethical thing.
But it's not as like vilified as it is in this country, right?
For sure,
like
no doubt.
There's something different happening there, where it's like that one group of that family that's playing music with the little clippers and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they found an entire field that for whatever reason the grapes had never been picked, and they're like, it's free game. Because it's past the season. Like the season is over. And so we can do this legally regardless of the fact that we don't own it. And you're like, that would never happen in the United States. Not in a million years.
Well, and it's
They'd shoot those people.
Possibly, depending on whose property you're on. But I do think it's interesting that they do bring in this like this judicial kind of perspective, and also the building manager perspective. And this is really more about those kids that you were talking about earlier, who are more kind of the hoodlum kids. They all have dreads. And
Yeah.
they're gleaners, and they are destroying property. So obviously, there's laws against that.
But it gets into squatting, right?
Yes.
I mean, yeah. It's really
Which is
interesting.
what Vagabond is basically about.
Very much
to
so.
some degree. So these kids are really fascinating. I think she asked how old one of them was, and they're only 22 years old out here. And I don't know. What do you think of those kids?
Again, this is one of the moments that gave me very Herzog similar vibes. Is that I think she's fascinated with them because they do give off that vagabond. I think that she had a lot of empathy because she's made this character before, 15 years before. Also, I love that she says they're so beautiful because they're choosing this life. And she's like, and it's incredible how beautiful they are because they basically survive on garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like the fact that she sees that, right. That she sees, though they have this dog and they're sitting and playing with the dog and petting the dog, and that she's falling in love with them. And at the same time is acknowledging like, it's amazing that they're so youthful and full of vigor and they're not struggling, even though they literally are surviving on garbage. And I was so struck by, I think the similarities between the two is I always said that Herzog in his documentaries and even in his narrative films, but more his docs, always felt like an alien who landed on Earth and has always just been in love with the human condition, all the parts of it, the ugly and the beautiful.
Yeah.
And Agnès Varda strikes me exactly the same way.
For sure.
That it's like any opportunity to get closer to a human being who's going through something is just like the delight of all delights.
Well, that's when
people.
You get real humanity, right? Especially if you're approaching them in the middle of doing something like this, you're going to get, people aren't ready to be interviewed in these situations, right? They haven't gone through makeup or anything. This is a very, like I said, fly by the seat of your pants kind of documentary. Getting back to the kind of the judicial or legal side to this, it's kind of interesting to hear because there's different rules for different objects, right? When you get to when you're finding like a fridge on the side of the street or something, that owner has officially given up ownership by putting that there. So as soon as you take it, it is officially yours. But you can't do that with all the food. You can't do that with all the things. So it's really particular about what you can and can't do. But I don't know. It's pretty interesting overall, and it obviously, if you didn't notice, it gets weirdly competitive out there on the streets too.
Yeah, well, and there's definitely and I think that she does such a great job of letting the camera roll and show us how some people are having to deal with this. There is there's the guy who has the house where they're cooking all the meat. And his friend, and God, this feels like a line straight out of Vagabond. He says, "Oh, Paul is, Paul is like a bird. He comes and goes as he pleases, and I always hope he's going to land back here." And it's that slightly younger black guy, right?
Yeah.
And that just feels like their relationship. I'm like, that's from Vagabond. I feel like, but
for sure.
When he's out gleaning, that one woman is like yelling at him and is like, "I'll call the cops." And you're like, because guess what? I would say in a city like Paris, there's a big difference between being the guy with the master's degree and looking like a nerdy, quiet little white guy and probably be able to go underneath, the kind of radar without anybody calling him out. But if you're a younger black man that's homeless anywhere in the Western world, people are going to treat you differently, right? And so we even just see that in these moments where she just lets the camera roll and you're like, oh, okay, it's not always this perfectly innocent cultural norm.
For sure. Yeah, no,
that we all accept, right?
I thought that was a good kind of, I don't know, the joy of this movie to me was Agnès, and the fascination with the whole gleaning. It was just something, the best documentaries are, one, have a great subject, which is her. Yep. Two, is about something you don't know about, right? And so you can learn or understand the history a little more, and that's really what is going to make your documentary unique, or just not like the thousand other things that you've seen. But to me, the whole her discovering and bringing us inside of her house and turning on the camera whenever she sees fit or whatever, it really did it for me with this movie. So I really loved it. The last thing I'll say, this was the other kind of Herzogian moment to me. This is near the end, probably the last 10 minutes, and she gleans a clock with no hands.
I love it.
She says,
so good.
"A clock without hands is my kind of thing."
It's my kind of thing. I love it so much.
You don't get to watch time pass. It is a very artistic, like, filmmaker type of thing.
Love
So
the clock
and
with
the
no
symbolism
hands.
of a clock with no hands is just like, mwah, perfect.
100%.
Love it. Great movie though.
Last thing I'll say is, and I wanted to get your opinion about this too. Because she's doing handheld, because she doesn't have a cinematographer here and she's just running and gunning with it, did you still see those jaw-dropping framed up shots?
I did, when it started, and through the credits sequence, I was like, oh, we're still getting her spastic editing and all of this stuff, and like the close framing. I did not feel like it was that nearly as much. I mean, the cinematography and her narrative stuff definitely stands out. We're here again. One, she's just discovering this camera and how to use it. I don't see any tripods anywhere.
No.
There it is very handheld. So it was a different experience, but I love that, especially when we're jumping generations through her filmography. This was made in 2000, filmed in probably 99, I'm guessing. I think they talk about the turn of the century in the movie. So
I think they talk about Y2K.
Well, that's it. And so this is seriously at the beginning. Like, I'm in film school during this time, and digital cameras are just becoming a thing. And so I think that adds some greatness to this, though. So I really appreciated that part of it, and just the subject matter. I didn't know what I was getting into, and wasn't sure if this was going to capture me like her other movies. But by the end, great.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of really nicely framed shots I noticed, but
nothing as stark as what we've seen, I think.
And instead, what we got was the dancing lens cap.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is the most, it's so adorable and wonderful that she's like, I forgot to turn my camera off and was just dancing to them in the field while they were playing while they were making their music with the shears. And I was like, that's a different version of those same flights of fancy or those noticings that kind of drag her off in a different direction. And you're like, that's gorgeous. That's like fantastic and delightful. So a whole other side to this woman that I could